Salvete, salvete, salvete. So today I'm going to read some snippets from this collection of the dialogues of Plato, which I have. They are selected with preparatory notes by Justin T. Kaplan for Dialogues Complete, Apology, Crito, Phaedo, and Symposium, and the most famous passages from the Republic. This is from the Pocket Library. The third printing is from 1955. Let's read the intro here. So it says, the dialogues chosen for this edition are the best known of Plato's writings, and also the most influential. They are valuable both as literature and as the major statements of his philosophy. The Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, forming a trilogy about the imprisonment and death of Socrates, present an impressive and dramatic defense of the philosophical life. The occasion for the symposium is a festive banquet, and the discussion, alternately earthy and sublime, is concerned with the nature of love. The Republic, a product of Plato's most comprehensive vision, deals with man both as a social creature and as a participant in eternity. So, let's read the introduction. Plato is essentially a practical philosopher rather than a visionary or aloof theorist, and even the little that is known of his life indicates the variety of worldly experience and observation on which he based his mature thought. He was born at Athens about 427 BC. The son of a prominent aristocratic family whose long tradition of leadership in the state he showed every promise of continuing. As a young man, he won the Isthmian wrestling competition, wrote poetry and drama, and most importantly, began a career in politics. He was to be concerned with the realities of statesmanship throughout his life, in the Republic as well as in the unfinished dialogues of his old age, the laws. Like other aristocrats of his time, Plato was decisively influenced by Socrates, whose uncouth appearance and intellectual unorthodoxy made him a conspicuous enough figure in Athens to be caricatured by Aristophanes and martyred by the state. Holding a unique position as an ethical leader of the young and unflagging conscience of the rulers and citizens of Athens, Socrates must have represented to Plato the pattern of the righteous man. Socrates' trial and execution in 399 BC was the major event. In Plato's early life. I'm going to use this to point. It's a lip liner, but it's kind of hurting my finger. Anyways, Plato's early life. One of favor with the state as a result of his support of Socrates. Out of favor with the state as a result of his support of Socrates, he abandoned his political career, and during the next 12 years he traveled extensively and probably saw military service. After his return to Athens, Plato began teaching philosophy at the Academy, which he founded about 387. Named after a grove of olive trees consecrated to the hero Academus. It was the first university in the Western world and continued in existence until 529 AD. That's quite impressive. That's what, like 800 years? When it was something like that. When it was closed by the Emperor Justinian, its curriculum, including both science and philosophy, seems the embodiment of Plato's conviction that the salvation of the state lies in the right training of its potential leaders. Plato interrupted his teaching twice to go to Syracuse as a tutor to the young tyrant Dionysius II. Both of these experiments in the education of a ruler ended in failure. The second one with such ill feeling that Plato barely managed to return in Athens in 360. I always think that that's kind of funny and ironic and very telling of what, the idealism of academia or theory is when put up against reality. The remaining years of his life were probably devoted to writing and to teaching at the Academy. He died at Athens in 347 BC. There are some 30 extant dialogues of Plato, all but a few of them undoubtedly genuine, and a group of letters. This is probably the whole of his written work. In the dialogues, he uses the dialectic method, the investigation of concepts by question and answer, which had been the characteristic approach of Socrates. Like Socrates, Plato is interested not so much in asserting a definite position as in the virtues of a clear and reasonable inquiry. Like Socrates again, Plato's emphasis is ethical rather than scientific. Knowledge is not separable from virtue, and the good is also the true. Although the main figure in most of the dialogues is Socrates, it is difficult to determine how much of this figure is historical and how much has been created by Plato for the exposition of his own philosophy. Plato's chief contribution is twofold. In his theory of ideas, he announces a belief in a world of reality which exists beyond the perceptions of the senses and which is intelligible only to the purified soul. The attainment of the vision of reality is the special purpose of the philosopher, and it is the greatest happiness of man. Closely related to the theory of ideas is the other pole of Plato's thought, the belief that the soul exists before birth and survives the death of the body. The dialogues chosen for this edition are the best known writings and also the best known of Plato's writings, and also the most influential. They are valuable both as literature and as the major statement of his philosophy. The Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, forming a trilogy about the imprisonment and death of Socrates, present an impressive and dramatic defense in the philosophical life. The occasion of the symposium is a festive banquet, and the discussion, alternately earthy and sublime, is concerned with the nature of love. The Republic, a product of Plato's most comprehensive vision, deals with man both as a social creature and a participant in eternity. JDK, which stands for, what is the guy's name? J.D. Kaplan. So this is the intro to the apology. Let's start here. In 399 BC, the 70-year-old Socrates was tried before the judges and citizens of Athens on charges of impiety and corrupting the young. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Plato was present at the trial, and the apology is his account, written some years after, of Socrates' 3 speeches in defense of himself. Although it is not to be taken as an exact transcript of the trial, the apology probably does represent the general line of argument that Socrates followed. In this sense, it is the most historical in intent of Plato's writings. The citizens who advanced the charge against Socrates and served as his prosecutor were Anytus, a politician of the restored democratic government, the poet Meletus, and the rhetorician Lycon. It is clear that the particular charges against Socrates were merely a mask for a general animosity, a nonconformist and an advocate of the voice of the wise rather than the voice of the many. A nonconformist and advocate of the voice of the wise rather than the voice of the many. Socrates must have represented a threat to the new regime. In his speech, Socrates seems less interested in refuting the charges, which he easily shows to be trumped up and inconsistent, than in explaining the animosity towards him and defending his philosopher's mission of searching into myself and other people. He has been a gadfly to the state, urging its citizens to self-improvement, and his search for wisdom has exposed their ignorance. His true enemies, he realizes, are not his prosecutors, but all those who oppose the life of reason and virtue. Who shrink before his convictions that the unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates is found guilty of the charges and is allowed to propose a penalty. Refuting to betray his mission, he suggests that he ought rather to be rewarded as a benefactor of the state. He does, however, propose a fine of money, for most of which his friends, among them Plato, will serve as security. In his last speech, after the sentence of death has been passed, he implies that he has made the court's decision inevitable. He cannot beg to be forgiven for a crime which he has not committed, and carrying his belief in his religious function to its final logic, he prefers to sacrifice his life rather to take upon him in any way the unrighteousness of his accusers. He has in effect forced his judges to martyr a man whom they wished merely to intimidate into silence. Apology. Persons of the dialogue. Socrates and Miletus. A scene. In the court, Socrates speaks. How you, O Athenians, have been affected by my accusers, I cannot tell, but I know that they almost made me forget who I was. So persuasively did they speak, and yet they have hardly uttered a word of truth. But of the many falsehoods told by them, there was one which quite amazed me. I mean, when they said that you should be upon your guard, and not allow yourselves to be deceived by the force of my eloquence. To say this, when they were certain to be detected as soon as I opened my lips, and proved myself to be anything but a great speaker, did indeed appear to me most shameless, unless by the force of eloquence they mean the force of truth. For if such is their meaning, I admit that I am eloquent. But in how different a way from theirs? Well, as I was saying, they have scarcely spoken the truth at all. But from me you shall hear the whole truth. Not now, however, delivered after their manner, in a set oration, duly ornamented with words and phrases. No, by heaven, but I shall use the words and arguments which occur to me at the moment, for I am confident in the justice of my cause. At my time of life I ought not to be appearing before you, O men of Athens, in the character of a juvenile orator. Let no one expect it of me. I must beg of you to grant me a favor. If I defend myself in my accustomed manner, and you hear me using the words which I have been in the habit of using in the agora, at the tables of the money changers, and anywhere else, I would ask you not to be surprised, and not to interrupt me on this point. For I am more than 70 years of age, and appearing now for the first time in the court of law, I am quite a stranger to the language of the place, and therefore I would have you regard me as if I were really a stranger, to whom you would excuse if he spoke in his native tongue, and after the fashion of his country. Am I making an unfair request of you? Never mind the manner, which may or may not be good, but think only of the truth of my words, and give heed to that. Let the speaker speak truly, and the judge decide justly. And first I have to reply to the older charges and to my first accusers, and then I will go on to the later ones. For of old I have had many accusers, who have accused me falsely to you during many years. I am more afraid of them than of Anytus and his associates, who are dangerous too in their own way. But far more dangerous are the others, who began when you were children, and took possession of your minds with their falsehoods, telling of one Socrates, a wise man, who speculated about the heaven above, and searched into the earth beneath, and made the worse appear the better cause. The disseminators of the tale are the accusers whom I dread, for their hearers are apt to fancy that such inquirers do not believe in the existence of the gods, and they are many, and their charges against me are of ancient date, and they were made by them in the days when you were more impressible than you are now, in childhood, or it may have been in youth, and the cause when heard went it by default, for there were none to answer. And hardest of all, I do not know, and cannot tell the names of my accusers, unless in the chance case of a comic poet. All who from envy and malice have persuaded you, some of them having first convinced themselves all this class of men are most difficult to deal with, for I cannot have them up here and cross-examine them, and therefore I must simply fight with shadows. In my own defense, I argue that there is no one who answers. I will ask you then to assume with me, as I was saying, that my opponents are of two kinds, one recent, the other ancient, and I hope that you will see in the propriety of my answer long before the others, and much oftener. Well then, I must make my defense, and endeavor to clear away in a short time a slander which has lasted a long time. May I succeed, if so succeed be for my good and yours, or likely to avail me in my cause. For the task is not an easy one. I quite understand the nature of it, and so, leaving the event with God, in obedience to the law, I will now make my defense. I will begin at the beginning, and ask what is the accusation which has given rise to the slander of me, and in fact has encouraged Miletus to prefer this charge against me. Well, what do the slanderers say? They shall be my prosecutors, and I will sum up their words in an affidavit. Socrates is an evildoer, and a curious person, who searches into things under the earth and in heaven, and he makes the worse appear the better cause, and he teaches the aforesaid doctrines to others. Such is the nature of the accusation. It is just what you have yourself seen in the comedy of Aristophanes, who has introduced a man whom he calls Socrates, going about and saying that he walks in air, and talking a deal of nonsense concerning matters of which I do not pretend to know either much or little. Not that I mean to speak disparagingly of any or one who is a student of natural philosophy. I should be very sorry if Miletus could bring so grave a charge against me, but the simple truth is, O Athenians, that I have nothing to do with physical speculations. Very many of those here present are witness to the truth of this, and to them I appeal. Speak then, you have heard me, and tell your neighbors whether any of you have ever known me hold forth in a few words or in many upon such manners. You hear their answer, and from what they say of this part of the charge, you will be able to judge of the truth of the rest. This little foundation is there for the report that I am a teacher and take money. This accusation has no more truth in it than the other, although if a man were really able to instruct mankind, to receive money for giving instruction would, in my opinion, be an honor to him. There is Gorgias of Leontium, and Perdiccas of Chaos, and Hippias of Elis, who go the round of the cities, and are able to persuade the young men to leave their own citizens by whom they might be taught for nothing, and come to them whom they not only pay, but are thankful if they may be allowed to pay them. There is at this time a Parian philosopher residing in Athens, of whom I have heard, and I came here to hear of him in this way. I came across a man who had spent a world of money on the sophists, Callias, the son of Hipponicus, and knowing that he had sons, I asked him, Callias, I said, if your two sons were foals or calves, there would be no difficulty in finding someone to put over them. One should hire a trainer of horses, or a farmer probably, who would improve and perfect them in their own proper virtue and excellence. But as they are human beings, whom are you thinking of placing over them? Is there anyone who understands humans and political virtue? You must have thought about the matter, for you have sons. Is there anyone? There is, he said. Who is he? Said I. And for what country? And of what country? And what does he charge? Aphanus the Parian, he replied. He is the man, and his charge is 5 minae. Happy is Aphanus, I said to myself, if he really has this wisdom, and teaches at such a moderate charge. Had I the same, I should have been very proud and conceited, but the truth is that I have no knowledge of the kind. I dare say, Athenians, that someone among you will reply, yes, Socrates, but what is the origin of these accusations which are brought against you? There must have been something strange which you have been doing. All these rumors and this talk about you would never have arisen if you had been like other men. Tell us then what is the cause of them, for we should be sorry to judge hastily of you. Now I regard that this as a fair challenge, and I will endeavor to explain to you the reason why I am called wise, and have such an evil fame. Please to attend then, and although some of you may think that I am joking, I declare that I will tell you the entire truth. Men of Athens, this reputation of mine has come of a certain sort of wisdom which I possess. If you ask me what kind of wisdom, I reply, wisdom such as may perhaps be attained by man, for to that extent I am inclined to believe that I am wise, whereas the person whom I was speaking have a superhuman wisdom, which I may fail to describe, because I have it not to myself, and he who says that I have speaks falsely, and is taking away my character. And here, O men of Athens, I beg you not to interrupt me, even if I seem to say something extravagant, for the word which I will speak is not mine. I will refer to you a witness who is worthy of credit. That witness shall be the god of Delphi. He will tell you about my wisdom, if I have any, and of what sort it is. You must have known Chaerephon. He was early a friend of mine, and also a friend of yours, for he shared in the recent exile of the people, and returned with you. Well, Chaerephon, as you know, was very impetuous in all his doings. And he went to Delphi, and boldly asked the oracle to tell him whether, as I was saying, I must beg you not to interrupt, he asked the oracle to tell him whether anyone was wiser than I, and the Pythian prophetess answered that there was no man wiser. Chaerephon is dead himself, but his brother, who is in court, will confirm the truth of what I am saying. Why do I mention this? Because I am going to explain to you why I have such an evil name. When I heard the answer, I said to myself, what can the god mean, and what is the interpretation of the riddle? For I know that I have no wisdom, small or great. What can he mean when he says that I am the wisest of men? And yet he is a god, and cannot lie. That would be against his nature. After long consideration, I thought of a method of trying the question. I reflected that if I could find a wiser man than myself, that I might go to the god with the refutation in my hand. I should say to him, here is a man who is wiser than I, but you said that I was the wisest. Accordingly, I went to one who had the reputation of wisdom, and observed him. His name I need not mention. He was a politician whom I selected for examination, and the result was as follows. When I began to talk with him, I could not help thinking that he was not really wise, although he was thought wise by many, and still wiser by himself. And thereupon I tried to explain to him that he thought himself wise, but was not really wise, and the consequence was that he hated me, and all his enmity was shared by several who were present and heard me. So I left him, saying to myself as I went away, well, although I do not suppose that either of us knows anything really beautiful and good, I am better off than he is, for he knows nothing and thinks that he knows, and I neither know nor think that I know. In this latter particular, then, I seem to have slightly the advantage of him. Then I went to another who had still higher pretension to wisdom, and my conclusion was exactly the same, whereupon I made another enemy of him, and of many others beside him. Okay, I'm going to stop here. This is a rather long if you would like for me to